Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling just a massive, deeply personal question. It comes from this dialogue transcription we got, and it just grabs you right away, basically. When exactly do we need to stop simply living our lives and start, digging deep into the foundations of the self?
It's a huge question, absolutely. And the source material, it really frames it well. It mentions a previous chat they had that felt too compact, like they'd only scratched the surface, marked the tip of the iceberg, as they put it. So our job today is to, well, plunge into what's underneath, specifically figuring out if this inner self-audit thing is really necessary, or maybe it's just too much navel-gazing for our times.
Right. And the philosopher's first answer is maybe surprisingly pretty practical. It gives you, the listener, a kind of immediate test. He says, look, if a person lives and genuinely feels fine, if you don't have that inner restlessness that makes it hard to breathe, then, okay, no audit needed. Phew, right, relief.
Mhm.
Except, the dialogue pretty quickly suggests that people who are truly fine, they're maybe quite rare these days.
Exactly. And why is that? Why this kind of chronic low-level unhappiness everywhere? The dialogue points to one root cause for most modern psychological issues. It lies in a specific feature of the social human, a figure they actually name: Homo Socialis. We really need to unpack who this person is because it explains so much about why many feel so, well, vulnerable.
Okay, Homo Socialis, let's break that down. The text defines this person as someone who has totally forgotten what it means to survive alone, or even just leading a tiny group like 2 or 3 people. And it's not just that the skill is gone, it says they've lost even the idea of such autonomy. The very concept is alien.
And losing that idea is the critical part. You see, when this concept comes up in the source, the questioner immediately pushes back. Like, why do we need autonomy now? We live in comfort. We depend on each other for everything: food, safety, the works.
Makes
But the philosopher draws this really crucial line. He says, yeah, physical survival, that's collective now, sure. But psychological survival, that still requires individual strength, individual fortitude. And it seems we've outsourced our inner resilience, just like we outsourced, I don't know, farming.
Wow. Okay, that makes this Homo socialite sound incredibly fragile then. The source even says explicitly he's extremely vulnerable, built entirely into a collective field.
Mm.
So when that field, trembles even slightly, he's thrown from side to side.
Hmm.
And we see that constantly, don't we? Huge emotional swings over like minor cultural shifts or little economic bumps.
And that fragility, the text argues, comes directly from what they call the delegation of awareness to society.
Mm.
Just think about it. The dialogue offers these great, really simple examples like, do we ever genuinely stop and wonder how everything in a giant shopping mall actually gets there?
Huh.
Or the full messy process of where our garbage goes. I mean, really trace it, every single step with full awareness.
Yeah, no, most people, myself included, probably would think, why on earth would I need to know that? That's someone else's job.
Exactly. And that is the core of the problem, according to the source. By delegating that awareness, we stop building our own internal map of reality. We lose the connections, the tissue linking things together in our existence. So the philosopher argues the modern person hasn't just lost their inner framework, they've stopped knowing where to look for it. We don't even know where the blueprints might be anymore.
So it's like we've forgotten the landscape because we just stopped looking out the window long ago.
Yeah.
The source uses this brilliant metaphor here. It really paints a picture of this psychological confinement.
Yeah, it describes Homo socialis as finding himself right from childhood stuck inside a narrow corridor of possibilities.
Hmm.
And this corridor, it's just lined with signs society put up, signs pointing to this college, that career, these hobbies, those politics.
Right.
Life just becomes about Getting really good at turning into the right corridor whenever you hit a fork in the road.
And the real kicker, the tragedy of it. They don't even remember what it was like standing in an open field of possibilities, with not a single signpost in sight.
Hmm.
They don't know what that kind of freedom or maybe terror even feels like. They just know the corridor, the guided path.
Which circles us right back to that initial question. When is it time to dig deep? Well, for anyone finding themselves constantly hitting the walls of this corridor, people facing chronic life problems, things lasting months or years, for them, reflection becomes basically the only way out. And the source lays out two big options here. One is inner work, really stressing that the rescue of the drowning is the work of the drowning themselves.
Mm.
Or the other path is what they term the path of faith, joining those who try to see the world from a transcendent height.
Okay, so let's say you choose that inner work path. It means facing these fundamental gaps, right? Gaps linked to satisfaction, meaning that constant low-level anxiety. And the source gives a warning here. Until you actually notice and really honestly accept these gaps exist, no quick fix is going to work. Not therapy, not mindfulness courses, none of it. It's like trying to slap a coat of paint on a crumbling wall.
Exactly. And to find those gaps, you have to be willing to hold on to those core existential questions. The philosopher lists them out. What am I? Where am I? Where did I come from? Where will I go? Why do I live?
They sound so simple, almost childish. But trying to hold just one of those questions, honestly, as the text says, without borrowed quotations or ready-made answers, that's where the real tough work starts. Because trying to do that, it immediately shows you this unfamiliar emptiness.
And that emptiness is terrifying, isn't it? Because it suggests there's no pre-installed self-generating framework inside. It's just space. And that emptiness, the source suggests, is the very door we're afraid to open. Because opening it feels like we might lose the cozy, subjective little world we've built for ourselves, the one where we feel like we know what's going on.
Which leads right into the modern coping strategy. The philosopher says instead of facing that void, the modern person, get this, doesn't live, he repairs himself on the move. Like constantly patching new holes that appear in their little subjective bubble, shutting down anxiety the second it pops up. So it's just this endless cycle of reactive maintenance. That's modern neurosis, basically.
Yeah.
Always trying to react faster, buy the right thing, join the right group, instead of just stopping the whole frantic process for a minute.
So if that's the problem is constant patching, where's the starting point for, actual rebuilding?
Step one, according to the text, is starting to reflect. And they make a point about the word. It's not just thinking. It means to keep a question open without rushing to answer it. You have to sit with the uncertainty, hold that tension.
Okay, step one is reflection. Step two. Well, this is the big one. The philosopher actually warns the person he's talking to, you won't like this next part.
Uh-oh.
This second step demands that a person, at least for a while, step out of almost all the we's they belong to.
Whoa, hang on. Step out of all the we's. That sounds, I don't know, incredibly irresponsible, maybe impossible. Our jobs, our communities, our political groups, our families. Isn't that like advocating for, well, social suicide?
No, not physical isolation. They're very clear on that. It's framed as an inner experiment, an inner exit from the we, meaning every collective identity that puts even the slightest ideological influence on you. Your nation, your profession, your online communities, even intense hobbies you strongly identify with.
Okay, so it's not about dumping your family or quitting your job necessarily. It's about mentally, psychologically, unhooking from the identity those things impose on you. Wow. That almost seems harder than just physically leaving. How do you even begin to quiet that internal chorus of the collective?
It is incredibly hard. But the argument is it's necessary if you want to actually hear one's own voice.
Hmm.
The analogy they use is pretty vivid. It's like repairing a car. You drive the car yourself into your own private garage, you close the door, and you basically tell everyone, don't come in until I put it back together.
Hmm.
You need that dedicated private space away from the noise and demands of the road, you see.
Right. And unlike fixing a car, which might take a weekend if you're lucky,
Yeah.
rebuilding yourself, that could take, well, much longer.
And needs way more courage. Absolutely. But the payoff for embracing that kind of radical inner solitude, it's profound. The text says, until a person dares to be alone, they won't understand what parts they're made of. It's
Mhm.
only in that quiet space that you can finally see what in you is truly your own and what has been imposed. You start to tell the difference between your genuine, innate ways of being and the sort of cultural prosthetics that society just grafted onto you.
Okay, this leads us to the destination or maybe a waypoint of this inner journey. Individualism. But we need to be super careful with that word, right? It gets thrown around and weaponized a lot today.
Yes, and the philosopher is very precise here. This individualism is not about rebellion, narcissism, or pure egoism.
Mhm.
It's defined strictly as inner autonomy. It's not about being selfish. It's about being self-structured, having your own internal foundation.
And crucially, the source positions this stage as a means, not the end goal. Individualism is called a necessary condition of maturity, but not a sufficient one.
Hmm.
Stopping there is actually dangerous, it says. It just makes you an egocentric isolationist. So it's really just a transitional stage. It's needed to step outside the collective illusions, get some clear air, gain a proper perspective.
Exactly. And once you've hopefully achieved some of that inner autonomy, then you look beyond. Beyond individualism, the text says, begins the realm of the transcendent, which is defined as that which is greater than I and all we's combined. This involves actively looking for the very foundations that make existence itself possible, looking where familiar frames and personal, social, even linguistic, pushing beyond the usual boundaries.
Okay, that sounds incredibly high level,
Yeah.
very philosophical. How does achieving that kind of transcendent view actually help me, deal with Monday morning? Paying bills, traffic jams, arguments with family. What's a practical payoff?
The practical payoff is stability, inner stability. The source suggests that when you manage to develop this ability to see yourself in your life in the context of the infinite, then the day-to-day ups and downs, they just stop feeling like total catastrophes.
Ah, okay. They become more
Yeah.
like the source says, waves that simply come and go, kind of like how the Stoics talked about things.
Yeah.
So you start operating from your center instead of being tossed around by the chaos.
Hmm.
And that stable center is only reachable by taking that difficult, maybe scary step through individualism first.
Precisely. Individualism serves as the bridge. After you've done that work of, let's call it self-modernization, then the person can choose to cross that bridge again, return to social life, or maybe not, or maybe cross back only when necessary. The key difference is the return is now a conscious choice, not driven by that desperate neediness or dependency of Homo Socialis.
It definitely sounds hard, leaving all those we's, especially the ones that feel safe and comfortable. But the philosopher concludes, look, for those people whose chronic problems have become like a stake driven into the ground, stopping them dead, for them, there's simply no choice. It's either endure the ongoing pain within the collective or face the temporary pain of solitude to find a different way.
And the dialogue ends on this really powerful, almost mystical note, a promise for those who actually dare to venture into that inner quiet. It says, if they are lucky, behind that door of emptiness they feared, they might one day hear a silence from which neither I nor we is born, but something third indescribable, yet alive. And that's the point they suggest when everything finally begins to fall into place.
Wow. Okay. So we've really unpacked this critical difference between just collective comfort and true individual autonomy. And the frankly terrifying journey needed to maybe find the real self underneath it all. So if you're listening and you recognize yourself in that cycle of constantly repairing yourself on the move, maybe just consider this. Which of your we's, your political tribe, your professional identity, your social group, which one feels the absolute hardest to mentally step away from, even just for an hour?
Yeah, and the deeper question the source leaves us with is pretty profound, I think. If we are always just patching these holes, always putting off the really hard work of reflection, what fundamental human experience are we actually delaying or maybe avoiding altogether by never just sitting still and facing that unfamiliar emptiness inside?
Lots to think about there. That was our deep dive into inner autonomy and the potential crisis of Homo Socialis. If you found this discussion useful or thought-provoking, remember you can listen to this whole analysis again on audio. And please do check out our channel page for more deep dives into the texts and ideas shaping how we understand ourselves in the world.